That's Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Creepy kind of day. Creepy, weird. Facebook, no longer going to be, I guess, Facebook. Going to be Meta. And it's going to be the metaverse. Kind of like a universe, only meta. Everything's going to be meta. And there was a weird, creepy, like almost 4-minute long Zuckerberg video of him talking about the company and the focus, and in a very robotic kind of anything but personal kind of way, very staged. In fact, even had people walk by, and it was even, you could see the robotic walking by of people. It was weird video, all to lay out the fact that Meta will be the new name. Kind of like Google isn't really Google anymore, it's Alphabet. Facebook is now going to be is going to be Meta, with some weird goofy little symbol, which is the, I guess, the Meta symbol. I don't know who they paid to do that, but here's the interesting part. Understand. Whistleblower complaints, the Facebook papers are out. There's tons of stuff going on in Congress. A lot of people are looking at Facebook as being, I don't know, responsible for January 6th, responsible for the destruction of our democracy, responsible for all of the kookery, responsible for all of the insanity that we've seen, because their algorithm brought all of the conspiracy quacks all together into one space. And not only did they bring them together, they kind of promoted them, because we now find out that a like was worth 1, and an angry emoji face, was worth 5. So the angrier people were at something, the more it was promoted. And as we know about anger, people tend to stay around when they're upset, and they go diving headfirst into the rabbit hole, which is what Facebook wants. That's how they make their money, you staying there scrolling and buying and participating in all of that. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about bringing people together. Oh, we care about people and personal relationships. No, they don't. If that were the case, they'd help you get a hold of Aunt Marge. Maybe you get a fruitcake at Christmas. That's not what this is about. This is about keeping you engaged in whatever they throw at you. Which is why I don't use Facebook. In fact, every rational, sane person should immediately turn off any notifications whatsoever from social media. Stop with the notifications. When you want something, go find it. Because, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people are coming around to the reality of, these things just don't show up on my timeline. Because originally it was whatever was posted at that moment. Originally it was, you had friends, you had all your people there, and they would share things with each other. No, that's not how it is. Based on, the emoji thingies, and based on you pushing the little buttons, it rises or falls. And, well, the stuff that keeps people angry is what we got a steady diet of, which is why you saw, I think Congressman Benny Thompson said it, overwhelmingly, Facebook was the tool that organized the January 6th insurrection. And I would argue the whole Q-Kook movement and all of that. It's all right there because of, their want to keep you on their platform. Their need to profit off of you being there. And I had someone go to me, well, what's the difference between Facebook, keeping you engaged and keeping you, consuming their product of the tobacco companies or McDonald's or anything else? And it's an excellent question. I would argue that, the tobacco companies and McDonald's haven't really, jabbed a stake in the heart of democracy. Facebook, I think, a big part of this. But if you got a minute, take a look at the really creepy Zuckerberg ad saying that, Now we're going to be known as Meta. It's going to be the metaverse. Will no longer be Facebook. And I was waiting for one of those moments. I was waiting for really one of those moments where he's going, now we own the world. And that weird little symbol, that'll be like the symbol formerly known as Facebook. So there's that. The other story that got my attention, big one. Richard Burr, who, if you remember, back in January, said, I've been cleared of all questions. Cleared. I am innocent. Evidently, we're now finding out that he's back under investigation. The Securities and Exchange Commission is looking into the fact that they've got phone records of the North Carolina senator and his brother-in-law, who the second that the brother-in-law hung up, called and dumped a bunch of stock. This is what's known as insider trading. He got some insider information. He made some phone calls. People made some money off of it. I don't know why he's not already in jail. Personally, I don't know why the two former senators from Georgia aren't in jail. I don't know why half of Congress isn't in jail, because they all do this, because it's amazing how they go in there. Yeah, they're doing financially okay, and then all of a sudden, wow, they're multimillionaires. I don't know how Mitch McConnell became a gazillionaire. I don't. The guy has never, as far as I know, has never had a job. He's been in the House and the Senate, 100 years? But somehow, one of the richest guys in the Senate. Gee, I wonder how that is. Quite interesting. Now, on this front, I think we lock them all up. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you made money off of what information you got, especially a Republican who knew that his president and the administration and his party was going to do zero to help protect people, and things were going to get really bad. They knew this, and they profited off of it. Jail for them all. Just my thought. Now, the big news today. Joe Biden has unfurled the $1.75 billion spending plan. The blueprint, as he has laid out, has some money for climate change, a little over $500 billion, which is not what we need. We need much more. Some money for childcare and preschool, about $400 billion. A little bit of money for the child tax credit and earned income tax credits, something we need much more, but he got $200 billion for that. Some other stuff to help the ACA, home care for seniors and for people with disabilities, some money for housing, a little bit of money for higher education and workforce development. And oddly enough, the one that sticks with me, and I think the thing that's the biggest slap in the face. Look, the free community college out the window, negotiating for drug prices, for Medicare out the window, paid family leave went from 12 weeks to 4 weeks to, no weeks, out the window. There's a lot of this stuff that got chucked out the window because Manchin and Sinema. I think the thing that infuriates me the most about this is the Medicare expansion part. It seems sane and rational to me. Sanders' plan to expand Medicare to cover dental, vision, and hearing. Because look, that all three of those are an integral part of being healthy, especially dental. Ask anybody who's ever had surgery, especially major surgery. One of the things that they do check before you go under is to see if you got any cavities, if you got any problems, any oral problems, because infections, things like that, kind of important. So it would seem to me, good oral hygiene keeps people healthy. Being able to see might help you stop and not walk out in front of a bus. I don't know. But fortunately, our heroes in the Senate have left the hearing. They chucked the dental, they chucked the vision, gone are those, but kept the hearing. Because maybe you want to hear when the bus is coming. I don't know. Maybe you want to hear how badly you're getting screwed over. Maybe that's the rationale, but I'm not getting it. Is it the cheapest of the options? Because I would think the vision would be cheaper. Because you could go to one of those fly-by-night joints in the mall and they'll give you glasses for $39.95, I guess. This is nuts to me. And this is how we do things in this country. Elon Musk saw his wealth go up $37 billion. $37 billion one day. One day. And yet, to expand Medicare, was $35 billion to ensure that all seniors in this country have access to hearing care. We couldn't do something to make sure that they got some teeth work, some chompers, something. Maybe some spectacles so they don't walk out in front of the bus. Nope, can't do it. We've got to make sure that our gazillionaires are well healed for. Now, there are some good things in this plan. Look, I'm not gonna trash the Build Back Somewhat Better. I'm not gonna build it. I'm not gonna do it. There are some good things. Universal pre-K for 3 and 4 year olds, good thing, I think. Starts them out early. I don't know why we didn't go, hey, on the other end, once they get a little bit older and need job training, maybe we should be doing some of that. But again, that had to get left somewhere. Some help with families to get child care, because hey, if we're going to mandate that you have 2 incomes to survive in this country, our spawn should have somewhere to go. Because sadly, we can't have jobs that pay an income sufficient to have 1 income support a family anymore. That, I guess, is a pipe dream. We want to make America great, but not that great. Also, a little bit of money to help seniors with home care, which I think is extremely important. They did get a 1-year extension of the money, the refundable tax credits for folks, the $250 that are going out. They got to keep that for a year. There's also some money in there to help build, some affordable, low-cost housing and rental assistance and that kind of stuff. I guess a little bit on the higher ed aid part. I guess there's some Pell Grant. I guess $550 into your Pell Grant. Which, I'm sorry, if you're paying $50,000 a year for tuition, I don't know that $550 is really going to make that big of a difference. But hey, I guess it's a start. It's something. Now look, at the end of this, there are some good things in this. Like I said, some stuff that we want. And I guess I'm fixated on the stuff that we didn't get, because those are the things that we needed the most. Negotiating for prescription drugs is just everybody I talk to, regardless of their political, even the Q-iest Q-kook I know doesn't understand how we don't negotiate for prescription drug prices with Medicare because of our buying power. Nobody gets it, other than the corporate lobbyists, other than Big Pharma. They get it. And this is why we have a problem in this country. Our elected leaders, they're dug into their parties, and never shall there be common sense. Never shall the voters actually get what they want. Because look, paid family leave is actually pretty popular. The idea that if you bring a child into the world, the idea that if someone gets sick, the idea that if you get sick, that you have the ability to have some social safety net. We're we're the only industrialized country on this planet that doesn't already have this. The only one. And one of the only countries, even there's some third world countries that go, no, we've got that. What do you think we are, America? Just bizarre. And of course, no billionaire tax. No way to pay for it. I mean, this is the part that just drives me insane. And this is what corporate money has done. That's the only explanation for Manchin and Sinema. There's no ideological purity test. There's no, we're broke. There's none of that stuff. This is purely who's whispering in their ear and filling their coffers. Because this stuff, up and down the ladder, all of it, would benefit Joe Manchin's state incredibly. One of the poorest states in the country would overwhelmingly get more money. And understand, they already get a ton of federal money. So when, Joe Manchin said he's concerned that, they're going to promote this welfare mentality, you go, wait a second, isn't West Virginia one of the leading states in the percentage of people actually on welfare because there are no jobs there? Did I miss that part of this? Because I'm looking at this as an opportunity to one, get us the things we need. This is the stuff that we would have had Reagan not become president. Had we not had Reagan in the 80s, who just destroyed the social safety net. Had we not had that, we would have some of these things. We would have, as a matter of course, said, yeah, we want to negotiate for prescription drugs. My grandmother, who's been dead now 6 years, big supporter of the idea of, maybe we shouldn't pay so much for drugs. And she would have loved the idea of getting her vision checked every once in a while, maybe going to the dentist every 6 months, like we're supposed to get checkups and cleanings and make sure everything's good so that we don't have massive problems down the road. But hey, if this gets through, she might have gotten her hearing checked, because at the end it was a little difficult. You weren't sure quite what she was hearing and what she wasn't. But I guess that's the fun of having older people around, especially when they don't have that kind of care. Now here's the bizarre part. As much as I've downplayed this, and it's okay. I don't think this is transformational as we would like. This still may not pass. As watered down, as beaten and battered as this is, as the Build Back Better plan is, it still may not get through. Because we're in this moment where you've got the moderates who are continually changing the goalposts, and you've got the progressives who are going, hey, this isn't enough. We're not going to give you the hard infrastructure bill unless we get something better than this. And you got the moderates, the conservatives going, well, if we don't get this, you don't get that. So as I said months ago, I do believe there's a good possibility we get nothing. And you have an entire Republican Party, all of the Republicans who are just sitting back, eating the popcorn, watching them going, look at them eat each other. Look what we've done. We don't have to do anything. They're destroying themselves. Who will do nothing. There's no help from the Republicans. There's none. And there will be none. I keep thinking in my head that maybe there's a moment where Republicans come to their senses and realize that their constituents, that their voters would overwhelmingly be served by this, especially rural communities. The ones screaming the loudest about socialism, the ones who take the most welfare and scream about socialism. Yeah, them. They would do wildly better. But the people that represent them don't care because they've got the flag in the ground. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And I'm, again, as an observer, guardedly optimistic something happens, but not 100%. But we got a lot to get to. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. That was the day garment factory owners locked out dressmakers in several shops throughout Los Angeles. The women garment workers, overwhelmingly Mexican, had been organizing with the ILGWU for over a month. They began conducting strikes at selected shops the previous month to press their demands. The women wanted union recognition, a 35-hour work week, end to homework, shop floor committees, a guaranteed wage, and more. Historian Douglas Monroy observed that their demands reflected the harsh working conditions that they faced. It was a volatile, competitive seasonal industry. Businesses worked tirelessly to undercut each other and job out the work. Women workers were routinely unemployed or underemployed, subject to widespread wage theft and discrimination. They were frustrated by promises of the new Industrial Recovery Act, which promised the right to organize, but held no provisions for enforcement. Employers flaunted the new legislation and continued to discharge workers for union activity. When the employers forced a lockout, Local 96 looked to the AFL's Central Labor Council to sanction a general dressmakers strike, which started 4 days later on October 12th. As many as 3,000 Latina strikers maintained solid picket lines despite dozens of arrests. ILGWU organizer Rose Posada arrived from New York to help with food distribution and packing the picket lines. The rank-and-file leadership produced a bilingual strike bulletin and made daily radio announcements. The The strike ended in arbitration that conceded few gains to the garment workers. But the women of Local 96 continued to organize throughout the Los Angeles area. They led a series of strikes that would eventually win the closed shop. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, I'm still stuck on this meta thing. I'm still stuck on how bizarre and creepy that video was. I don't think he blinked much either. I mean, it was one of those weird kind of, is that real or is that Memorex? Is that some kind of weird AI? Because even the people walking by were creepy. But the message was worse. I mean, I got this eerie feeling of, now we're going to take over the world. Metaverse, where we control everything. Scary, crazy times. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on well, will this solve Facebook's crisis? And also to discuss his conversation or confrontation with Madison Cawthorn. I've asked Jack Cocchiarella to come talk with us. Jack is the digital guru over at Retire Marco and Remove Ron. He's also the co-host of the Zoomed In podcast. Jack, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me on again. It's always a pleasure. It's always a privilege. Glad to be back and glad to have a lot to talk about. Well, maybe not super glad to be talking about Facebook again. Never a fun topic, but it's always fun to make fun of Mark Zuckerberg a little bit because, if he's going to be attacking our democracy, we can poke fun at the fact that he doesn't blink or that he just operates with this blank stare of, I'm a robot, I'm here to take over the world. So, but glad to be back on.
No, and look, we've over the last couple of days, we've found out that what we already knew, that most of the crazy organizing that went on the extreme right, most of the organizing that went into the January 6th insurrection, was because of Facebook and their algorithm of pushing hatred and the worst possible content to keep you addicted to the hate. It's the Orwellian 2 minutes hate right there on Facebook all day long.
Mm-hmm. It's what their platform is. It's what they feed. It's what they make money off of. They can sell it. They can advertise it, and so they do. Did you see the study that came out? I think it was an internal one done, that they created the profile of I think it was just a conservative-leaning mom, and within 2 days she had joined QAnon.
Yep.
Just because of how Facebook pushes you around. Like that is their goal. It is to push you to radical levels, to spend more time, to give them more attention. They're like a child. It's like, give me more attention. I feed off of it. I will push in whatever direction I need to go. It's kind of like the Republican Party. It's almost like these things are connected in the way they work.
Yeah, the hate machine. The hate machine works, and look, that goes into the what we found out about how they weigh likes versus angry emoji face. Angry emoji face evidently is worth 5 likes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. It's what they feed off of. It's the rage machine, and so if they can do more of that, that's what they will. And if it's at the expense of us, they don't really seem to mind because they are trying to take over. And nothing's really going to stop them if they have to.
Yeah, and it's not really about the country because I think he has global ambitions. Says they're the most used product in the history of civilization. And look, he's all about bringing people together, even if it means they're coming together to overthrow our democracy.
And do you remember was it 2016? There was some talk. I don't even know who was generating it, but Mark Zuckerberg, a couple of years down the road, maybe a run for president. Is this someone that we want as a lead? And now we're like, whoa, how about we slow that down? We see this guy wants to be controlled. Let's not he's touching democracy enough. Let's keep him away from any sort of power besides the one that he's trying to cultivate on his own with, his sort of drug-like Facebook addiction that he's trying to get people sucked into. You got social media companies, you got internet companies, and you got drug dealers. Those are people who describe the people who consume what they have. Those are users, right? Mark Zuckerberg wants users. He wants people to get sucked in so he can use them.
And you got on a certain level give them some credit because they have changed what had been once somewhat lucid, rational, somewhat thoughtful people into rabid haters.
Yeah. And I think that's been the goal. I guess you got to give them props for it because They've been successful in undermining democracy at every corner. Hopefully there can be a stop put to that soon. Hopefully we can come together and understand having a monopoly in information and shared experience online is something that is bad. I think hopefully we can get a little help from the Republican Party on that, maybe coming together in some bipartisan way. If we can get them to work on something, I don't know if they will. I don't know if they are willing to come to the table on that. But I think it's a good argument to be made that if we're gonna act on something, it's preventing a monopoly in information. I think that would be a reason to come together for once. For maybe one time, one time.
Yeah. We haven't seen them do much on monopoly, and I would argue we're in the monopoly stage of capitalism right now already, and it's only going to get worse. You go down the line: agriculture, manufacturing, information, media, all a handful of companies controlling everything we see, hear, read, consume. Not a good time.
No, not at all. And I think that if we can start with Facebook, we can start with this huge, huge monopoly that they're trying to amass. And if we can start there, maybe we can see that breaking those up in other places will be potentially beneficial to society as it operates. If these top levels of companies and people aren't controlling everything from the bottom down, if we can see the effect that it has on our mental health and our democratic institutions just on Facebook, we can see how it'll affect us elsewhere in terms of affecting workers in different industries.
I mean, ultimately, though, doesn't that come back to us, though? I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't had Facebook notifications on or any social media notifications on in forever. I consume what it is that I'm seeking. Anything they push at me, I automatically disregard. It's, I don't even look at half of the things that are on my feed. I seek out certain things, but I don't fall in that rabbit hole. I don't allow myself.
Yeah, you can say that if there's a bigger movement to delete Facebook and for people to move off the platform, that could be beneficial. They have billions of users. There's billions of users on Instagram, the messaging app that they have, just different platforms that they own. And it's difficult to say that the way we have to beat this company is to change our lives entirely from what they were when they, as a manager of their product, had the ability to change it for the better, to fix it in a way that's not going to be detrimental to the mental health of young people, that won't undermine democratic institutions. If they can put a stop to pushing myths and disinformation, those are the steps that they need to take. It's difficult to put it on us, the consumer, who just on this micro level interacts with them, when the big issues are coming from these systemic problems that exist within the organization that they can put a stop to, and that they understand how to stop or how to slow down.
Since you brought this up, I mean, I'm looking at the fact that what comes out of this, we now have, people like Lauren Boebert and, Marjorie Trader Green and Madison Cawthorn. We get these nothing people with horrible ideas in positions of power. And have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who hang on their words, and they're basically lunatics. And you had an opportunity to ask Madison Cawthorn why he won't stopping attacking our democracy, because he's one of the guys who riled things up, and in fact his name is on that list of people who before January 6th was possibly involved in the planning.
Yeah, well, of course it was. Of course he was a part of that. He has been adamant about his willingness to attack democracy. Recently, he was at a little bit of a rally or a semi-town hall, a meet and greet, and he said that depending on how things go in 2022 or 2024, he might be willing to take up arms against his fellow Americans. This is a sitting member of Congress saying that not only was he part of the first insurrection, but he's got more insurrection planning in his head going forward, right? He was saying maybe the first one wasn't all that it was cut out to be. Maybe we didn't get exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, we didn't get to hang Mike Pence.
But this next insurrection, boy, I'm gonna tell you, it's gonna be something. I'm already thinking. That's what Madison Cawthorn is telling the Republican Party. You saw that Bill Maher clip, maybe that was a couple weeks ago, and he was saying that right now Trump is putting in place the secretaries of state, the attorneys general, the governors, the representatives all across the country not just to boost his ego, but he's getting these radical people in positions of power, not just so they can appeal to the Trump voters, not so they can rile up the base, but in 2024, he wants those who did not help him execute on his plan to overthrow the election. Right. He wants them to actually be people who will say, yes, I am willing to turn my back on democracy. And that's what Madison Cawthorn is. He exists to help the MAGA movement go forward. He is not a person of any substance, any intellect on how to improve our country. He is simply a MAGA tool. And that's what all of these people are. And we have to treat them as such. They are not legitimate members of our government because they exist to attack our government. So we should only treat them as that.
But sadly, they are in these positions, and there are people who follow them, and rabidly. Most people can't name but a handful of members of Congress, but these guys, everybody seems to know who they are.
Yeah, they're basically, they fall into the OAN, the Fox, the Breitbart. They are like physical they represent that propaganda network as people. They go around as the propaganda network. That's what they are to do. They're the fish oil salesmen of the Republican Party, going around and preaching its false message. They're the false prophets of the Fox News, of the Trumps. And so, yeah, they're in positions of power. And it's difficult to be in Congress and also attack the existence of Congress as well, to vote against the power of Congress, to vote against the power of democracy. So it's a very difficult dichotomy when there's these people who serve in our government but don't think it should exist or attack it. And it's difficult to take them seriously because we've never really seen something like this, but it is happening now.
But the reality is the Republican Party has always been the party of government doesn't work, government shouldn't do anything, can't do anything, everything they do is horrible, but hey, vote for us so we can run government and show you exactly that it doesn't work.
Or it's, this election was fake, this election, don't count these votes, this and that, but I won my election. It's like the election was false, but no, I'm, if I'm a representative in Georgia, sure, Trump won the election, but, so did I. Like, it was a fake election and the machines were rigged and it was all fraudulent, but I won. So that's their new message. It used to be government is bad, but elect me. Now it's the election was fake, but elect me, or the election is going to be fake and fraudulent, but elect me. So I don't know how they're getting from these points that they're creating, but that's the new wave of the Republican Party.
Yeah, well, because they don't have any ideas. I mean, look at the fact that you have this Build Back Better plan that's now been watered down to build back a little bit better, maybe, and we're not getting the things that people need overwhelmingly, regardless of political ideology. Of the people I've run into, the things that were on there that got chucked, people wanted. Working people want this stuff. They need this stuff, and yet. Because of an entire political party and two Democratic senators, we're not going to get the things that we need. A generation will not get the things that they need.
And I think you may have saw the graphic. I saw it going around, but it was like 267,000 people in the state of West Virginia live in poverty, and there are 0 billionaires in the state of West Virginia. But who is Joe Manchin looking out for when he is legislating? He seems to be looking out for the billionaires that don't even exist within his state. And when he is discussing or legislating on the climate package that is going to be in the Build Back Better bill, he is not thinking about the roads and bridges or the towns that will be flooded or destroyed because of the bodies of water and the rivers that they exist next to as climate change continues to pick up. He's not thinking about them. He's thinking about the big oil and coal companies that are shelling out millions to him and to his super PACs and to his campaign every year to make sure that Joe Manchin is happy. He doesn't really think about his constituents all that much. And I'd like someone to send Joe Manchin those poll numbers of people in West Virginia. I think 87% support the reforms in the voting rights bill that he helped put together. Yet I think he's going to let that die because he refuses to make any carve out the filibuster. He brought the number down on the Build Back Better bill, on that social spending bill, not because it was going to cost us too much. Not that really it seemed like it was going to cost us much of anything if he would just raise taxes on the wealthy. He just didn't want to. It's really hard to know where Joe Manchin stands because it doesn't seem that he stands with his constituents. And it's also very difficult to know where Kirsten Sinema stands because she won't tell us and she'll make jokes about it. And sometimes she's not even where she's supposed to be. She'll be missing votes. She'll be off in Europe drinking wine, and I don't know what she's doing. Does she want to be a senator? Is she running again? Because she likes to miss her job a lot.
Yeah. Well, she was having biscuits with Mitt Romney. Did you see his tweet today?
I love Ted Lasso, but I do not love Mitt Romney as Ted Lasso. I was not okay with that. I said that I am going to be a goldfish, and I'm going to forget this image as quickly as possible, because I do not want to think about Mitt Romney and Kirsten Sinema. That sounds terrible. As two people I don't want to be hanging out with.
I'm going, don't
Absolutely
you have something to do? Can't you get something done? Because look, at the end of the day, while they're mired in this moment, there are people who genuinely need help, especially in a place like West Virginia, which is one of the poorest states in the country. If I'm Manchin, the legacy is I brought home the bacon. I made sure that every kid didn't go to bed hungry. I made sure every kid had an opportunity to get that pre-K and to maybe get that community college degree at the end to help them get an education, to either leave West Virginia or start businesses that's going to make things better. It just seems like common sense.
It really does. And then you look at Sinema as well, and people will argue in her favor, saying, well, maybe the people of West Virginia, it's not a huge Democratic majorities in Arizona. Maybe she's just trying to represent her constituents. Her constituents voted for Joe Biden. They voted for this bill. They voted for Mark Kelly. They sent Joe Biden to the White House, and they sent Mark Kelly to the Senate to go pass this legislation. So I don't know what she's doing. And in 2018, she ran on the drug pricing reforms that she's opposing now. Now, I know that she's gotten a couple big checks from Big Pharma since then, so that might be the issue, that she doesn't want to upset her new best friend over in Big Pharma, but I don't see a single argument that can be made on behalf of Kirsten Sinema suggesting that her constituents don't want these bills passed. The Democratic Party of Arizona has come out and said, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, we don't understand. We want you to pass these bills. The party wants you to. The people in your state want you to. Not just Democrats, independents, Republicans, alike, they want you to pass these bills. So get them done.
Yep.
And she hasn't.
Working people need it. 15 seconds. Does this get done?
Does it get done? I think it gets done at the number of the 1.75, but I don't see. We're losing things left and right, and it's an embarrassment, really, is what it is, and it's not looking good for 2022. But I think we still have time to turn it around.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But Jack, I appreciate the time, appreciate the work that you do. Hope people will check out the Zoomed In podcast and also some of the work you do over at Retire Marco and Remove Ron. Good stuff, Ron. Good stuff, Jack. I appreciate the time, man.
Thank you. Always love coming on.
Good stuff, Jack Cocchiarella. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1861. That was the day that the Pony Express made its last run and passed into legend. The mail delivery service had lasted only a year and a half, until it folded under competition from the newly completed transcontinental telegraph. The idea for a faster Western mail delivery service came from the owners of the wagon freight company, Russell, Majors, and Waddell. At the time, the railroad terminated in St. Joseph, Missouri. The goal of the Pony Express route was to cover the 2,000-mile route from St. Joe to San Francisco in 10 days, or half the time of competitors. Riders would travel between one station and another on horseback, switching horses as they went. For this arduous job, the company targeted young men, sometimes in their teens. The goal was to hire small men to keep the weight low for the horses. The riders had to sign a pledge not to drink, gamble, fight, or swear. To back up the clean living, they were each issued a Bible. Riders were paid a minimum of $50 per month in addition to room and board. The riders faced many hazards, from bad weather to thieves. They often traveled across lands in dispute between the U.S. government and Native Americans, adding to the potential danger. The fastest express delivery ever was Lincoln's inaugural address, which made it to California in under 8 days. Perhaps the most famous person who claimed to be a Pony Express rider was Buffalo Bill Cody, although it's unlikely he ever carried the mail. He incorporated the Pony Express into his Wild West show, turning the mail service into the stuff of legend. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, I'm like we said, hopeful something gets done. I would have liked to have seen the $6 trillion Build Back Better plan actually do some things that will help us build back better. That's kind of the thought. But it got watered down to 3.5, and now we're at 1.75, and I don't even know that is going to happen. I'm still on the not sure yet, but here to share some thoughts on. Well, is this good? Is this going to help us? Is it something that we should be excited about? Because we're seeing a bunch of posturing at this moment. And also, does that deadline at the end of this month happen? I'm not quite so sure. That's why we've asked Bill Scher to come talk with us. Bill is a contributing editor over at Politico magazine. Bill, thanks for taking time for us.
Always a pleasure.
So, let's start there. I understand. Have the Democrats moved the deadline for the end of this month? I thought I saw that they were moving it to December. Is that accurate?
That's my understanding, that they flinched from holding a vote on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. They instead passed an extension of the Highway Trust Fund through December 3rd. And that's what happened last month. The Highway Trust Fund generally gets extended for 5-year periods. There's a 5-year extension in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And if that did lapse, then financing for state and local transit and road projects would be dicey. I mean, projects wouldn't cease altogether right away, but money that would be coming in otherwise the states couldn't count on it. So that was supposed to be a pressure point to get the bigger bill done, but they keep flinching on it because progressives in the House have said we're not going to do this unless this is done in tandem with the broader Build Back Better bill. And even though there's a framework that was released by the White House today, it was not a full-blown legislation. It didn't have every T crossed. It didn't have explicit support from Manchin and Sinema. And so we're basically where we were 1 month ago.
Yeah, and this has been my fear all along, that we keep pushing it back, and we get the strategic pause that Joe Manchin wanted until we get to the point to where nothing gets done, and politically you take a bloodbath, and still we're another years behind actually getting our infrastructure fixed and doing the things that we need to get done.
I mean, what I find bizarre about this is the delay is in many respects what Manchin wants. Manchin wanted a pause. He's getting it. He even said at one point that we should let the pandemic relief process play out longer, see how inflation goes, before deciding whether to do Build Back Better at all. Now he was apparently willing to still do this in a more limited form, but waiting doesn't seem to make Manchin sad. And the progressives' logic behind holding the bipartisan infrastructure bill hostage was that it was going to entice Manchin and Sinema to get this done. And I just don't see that happening. I understand the logic going into it, but it's been a month, and all we've seen is Build Back Better get smaller, and we don't see Manchin and Sinema get antsy about finalizing that deal. So I just feel at this point, get some points on the board. Get something done now. Biden's had weeks and weeks of no good headlines.
Right.
let's get a good headline day and get some momentum going again. But that's not the path that they're on right now.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, and you're saying pass the bipartisan bill, take that as a win, and well, forget about the other one because it's never going to pass. Is that what I'm hearing?
No. I'm not saying that. I think the notion that Manchin and Sinema or other more quieter moderates would prefer to tank Build Back Better altogether, and the only reason why they may pass it is because progressives are holding the bipartisan bill hostage. I don't think that's an accurate lay of the land. I think all the Democrats know that they're in this together, that if Biden goes down, they all go down. And so there is a sense of mutual interest that I think still remains. But the degree of mistrust between progressives and moderates is not helping anybody right now. So if this was me, and obviously it's not, I mean, I would have passed the bipartisan bill off the top in the first place. I wouldn't have done this whole drama. I wouldn't have assumed that you couldn't get to, 1.5 or even 2 trillion plus if this had gone in the more in the more trusting way. But what we're seeing is the mistrust gets higher and higher and higher, and that's leading both camps to dig their heels in more and more and more. It makes it harder to get that final agreement.
Right, but you've got this Representative Jayapal, who was the Progressive Caucus chair, who evidently had a meeting with the president and said she didn't think the social safety framework that was outlined was enough to get progressives to come on board with the infrastructure plan. There's a bunch of stuff that got omitted from there, ripped out.
Yeah.
The fact that we can't get Granny a new set of chompers and some glasses, it just blows my mind. But we can get hearing, which you go, of the three, was that a flip of a coin, pull of a hat?
I think it was a cost. I think it was a cost thing. The dental's the most expensive of the three. So once you put and you argue it's artificial, you have an artificial ceiling on how much you're willing to spend, that's going to force things out of the bill. And the framework is tilted towards doing fewer things for longer time frames than doing everything for short time frames. Progressives want to do as many things as possible, even if the time frames were short, on the notion that, well, these things will be popular, and once we get it established, it'll be hard to, cut them off.
That's the camp I'm usually in.
And, Manchin and the House New Dems said that's gimmickry. You're not being honest with how much this costs if you're doing it that way. We want to have a truly paid for bill. And, if you do child tax credit for 1 year, which, mind you, that is what they're going to do in this thing. Child tax credit's $100 billion a year up through 2026. And that goes up to about $200 billion a year because the Trump tax cuts had its own child tax credit expansion, which sunsets in 2026. So it costs even more money if you're going to maintain a higher level based on your budget baseline. It costs more money. So if you're doing that for a bona fide 10-year period, it's a $500 billion, I think, through 2026, and then for the next several years, you're going to clear. You're going to go well over $1 trillion. I think it'll be maybe $1.5 trillion over a 10-year period. So that's a big chunk of change. If you're doing even it's a $3.5 trillion bill, that's a big piece of it.
Right.
So from the moderate standpoint, you haven't come clean with how much this really costs if you're not laying that on the line.
Now I look at this and aren't these conversations that should have been hammered out in private? Shouldn't the Democrats, because all we keep seeing is them fighting in public. There are no good headlines, and most people don't even know what's in this plan. Got the headline, Build Back Better, and who could be against Build Back Better? Evidently the entire Republican Party. But all we keep seeing them do is fighting over numbers and fighting over what shouldn't be in it, instead of going out and selling what could have been months ago a massive win and a great messaging vehicle. They've just blown this in every way possible.
It's not over. So there still could, sometimes it's darkest before the dawn. So you still might get to that point. But certainly this process is not helping them. Again, we've had a period since August where if it's not Afghanistan, it's COVID. If it's not COVID, it's the border. If it's not the border, it's the infrastructure bill being blocked. If it's not that, it's the debt limit drama, or it's the supply chain problem. It's always been something for several weeks and months now. And to your other point, if these negotiations started sooner and more quietly, privately, with less posturing, I mean, I think this could have been resolved in a smoother way. It's never going to work. I mean, what happened was Biden came in with the big moonshot proposal, and without having the buy-in from both the progressives and moderates in advance. The progressives liked it, but the moderates weren't there. And what we're seeing is you can't jam them. I mean, maybe the hope was that we'd have this thing, and it would poll well, and they'd see that they were on the losing side of the argument. They would just come around for the good of the party. And it did poll well. You know, the top lines polled well. You know, the basic elements of it poll well. But Manchin and Sinema, and I think others, not always as loudly, had their either provincial concerns or I think more big picture concerns in the case of Manchin and Sinema. And they proved willing to take a lot of heat, more heat than I think people assumed they were going to take. And that problem could have been avoided if there were more discussions, private discussions at the front end of this process, and not wait till the back end of this process to get embarrassed and humiliated.
Yeah, no. So is this Biden's fault? Is this Schumer's fault? Where do you place blame?
There's a lot of blame to go around here. You shouldn't even exempt Manchin and Sinema here. You know, they could have said something more reassuring that they were going to vote for the end product today, and they didn't. But I think Biden should not have proposed something without knowing full well how far Manchin and Sinema are willing to go. I mean, it's one thing to go big and pull it back a little bit for the sake of compromise. But if you got to knock out paid leave, community college, clean energy payment program, I'm probably missing things like the vision and dental. If you got to pull back that much, that says to me you didn't have the early conversations. That's a lot of stuff you're leaving on the floor now.
Especially
I think the House progressives should have been more trusting and not made a big deal about the bipartisan bill in the first place. They should have just taken a fully baked bill, had the win, and then move on to the next thing and have that negotiation in good faith.
Yeah, but here again, I come back to this. I don't think you get Manchin and Sinema anyway. I always saw the Build Back Better plan as the thing that was going to take everything down, and I still do. I still think that at the end of the road, there's a good possibility we get nothing.
Well, if your view of Manchin and Sinema is they're corrupt, they answer to their donors, they don't care about the Democratic Party, Sinema wants to cash in, Manchin cares about his son's coal business. I mean, if that's your view of it, maybe that's right. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong.
I'm not saying that's wrong. Right. I'm not saying that's the reason, but it's part of it. I think a part of it is and Manchin's position is as a moderate. Again, government shouldn't be doing a lot of things. The rhetoric I've heard from him about the welfare state, we don't want people to become dependent. I, on a certain level, get that. But this ain't that, man.
Well, my point is, if you think they're that bad and deep down don't want the bill, then they're not going to pass the bill. You can't make them.
Right. I don't think Manchin wants to pass the bill.
I mean, if that's true, then he's not going to pass the bill no matter what you do.
Right.
You don't have pressure and leverage over him. He is going to do what he wants. So I would have said, look, I would have taken the good faith path. Maybe he's not like that. Maybe there is. Maybe the Grinch's heart can grow 3 sizes bigger at the end of the day, and see what you can get from him in a quieter conversation. I mean, maybe it's wrong and you would get hosed, but you would get hosed anyway if he is a Grinch that has no heart.
It's an excellent. Look, when you look backwards at the decisions that were made, it's always 2020. But I thought pairing them together was the right move at the time for the things that we've talked about. that you get something, we get something, and something gets done. But I guess that's really old school thinking.
Well, I can't blame the Progressive Caucus for trying that, because you can't know.
Right.
You can't know how trusting you should be. There was a certain logic to gaining what leverage you could get with that. But we have tried that for a month, and all we have seen is Build Back Better get smaller and smaller and smaller. So I think at this point, I would say, look, you tried it. It didn't work. Take what you can get now and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I see, because I keep looking at how we're pushing on Manchin and how people are giving him, he's getting considerable heat. I got a friend who texts him every day some pretty nasty stuff. The stuff I can't say on the air. But sends him a couple of shots every day. The fear that I have is that at some point you just have him move to an independent and then caucus with the Republicans. You just lost the Senate.
I mean, I don't think Manchin would caucus with Republicans. I mean, there's some talk he might turn independent, but still caucus with Democrats. He has more power now. He has more power as the 50th Democratic vote.
Co-president.
As the 51st Republican vote, Mitch McConnell has all the power, and he has zero power. Nothing gets on the floor with McConnell as there. So I think progressives and Biden needed to recognize, look, Manchin, anyone who wants to be the 50th has power. Anyone willing to take the heat for being the 50th has power. And I think people assumed, I think on the front end, like really early in January, people are like, oh, Manchin, he just postures. He goes through the rigmarole. He does the kabuki, but he's a Democrat at heart. And West Virginia is a populist state, so he'll do the right thing after he goes through the motions. And then when it started to seem like he was doing more than just going through the motions, they shift it to he's corrupt, he's in the tank for coal, he's not a real Democrat. It swung very wildly. And, you just don't get a good read of a person unless you're talking to him.
Yeah.
And I just think a lot of the progressives should have very early on said, hey, let's talk. Let me see where you're at, see what really motivates you, what is important to you, what's not important to you. Let's find out where that common ground is. And we're in that process anyway, but it could have started a lot sooner.
Yeah, I personally, I would have loved to have been in the room with him and Bernie Sanders when they had their shindig. Because then he comes out with, how about zero? And that was kind of a negative for me. That was kind of a worrisome moment. So last question I've got for you, because, clearly, we've extended the deadlines. Do we get something by the end of the year? Do you have a handicap in this at all?
I mean, I'll retain my optimism, as dimmed as it might be at this point. Because again, I think everyone gets there is mutual interest here. It does not serve anybody's interest to get nothing. If Biden goes down, you can forget the midterms. If they can't pass this, the coalition shatters and splinters. But to your point about the how about zero thing, it's this. Progressives have told themselves these guys are willing to walk, and Manchin gets to use that as a leverage tactic. When he says how about zero, you believe it. It's a credible threat, which makes it easier for him to knock everything down.
Yeah, no, good point. Bill, I appreciate the thoughts as always. Good stuff. Appreciate the time. Hope you'll come back again real soon.
Always. Take care.
Good stuff. Our good friend Bill Scher. Make sure you check out his work over at Politico Magazine. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1965. That was the day that the St. Louis Gateway Arch was completed in St. Louis. The project was the result of a nationwide design competition. The arch soars 630 feet above the ground and is the highest monument in the United States. The arch was made from 900 tons of stainless steel. It was meant to symbolize St. Louis's role as gateway to Western expansion. The groundbreaking ceremony for the project was held in 1959. Workers from multiple unions were involved in building the arch. 250 Boilermakers from Local 659 in Warren, Pennsylvania, built the arch sections. Iron workers completed the on-site assembly. Electricians and plumbers were involved in the construction as well. According to historian Clarence Lang, the construction of the arch also became a focus of local activists' frustration by the lack of integration in federally funded construction projects. In July of 1964, Percy Green, a black activist, and Richard Daley, a white activist, scaled up 125 feet of the unfinished arch. The 29-year-old Green was the chairman of the Employment Committee for the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE. As Green and Daley perched on the arch, they shut down construction that day. Other protesters held a press conference below. They demanded that 10% of the work on the project be provided to African Americans. No black workers were hired as skilled craftsmen on the project. After 4 hours, the men climbed down and were arrested. The action brought media attention to the lack of black workers, not just at the St. Louis Arch, but at construction projects throughout the nation. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
If you're a corporate employee, you know that something unpleasant is afoot when top executives are suddenly issuing statements about how committed they are to their employees, making sure that all of them are treated with dignity and respect. For example, the PR chief of a global outfit named Teleperformance, one of the world's largest call centers, was recently going on and on about how, quote, "we value our people and their well-being, safety, and happiness." Why did the corporation feel such a desperate need to proclaim its virtue? Because it's been caught in a nasty scheme to spy on its own workers. Teleperformance, a $6.7 billion global behemoth that handles customer service calls for Amazon, Apple, Uber, etc., saves money on overhead by making most of its 380,000 employees around the world work from their own homes. That can be a convenience for many workers, but a new corporate policy, first imposed in March on thousands of its workers in Colombia, is an Orwellian nightmare. Teleperformance is pressuring them to sign an 8-page addendum to their employee contracts, allowing corporate-controlled video cameras, electronic audio devices, and data collection tools to be put in their homes to monitor their actions. "I work in my bedroom," one employee noted. "I don't want to have a camera in my bedroom." Neither would I, and I doubt that Teleperformance's $20 million a year CEO would allow one in his mansion. Uglier yet, the privacy-obliterating contract requires that even the children of employees can be spied on at home. Nonetheless, the Colombian worker signed because her supervisor said she could lose her job if she refused. Of course, Teleperformance Inc. assures us that the data it collects on children is not shared elsewhere. But how do we know that? Trust us, they say. This is Jim Hightower saying, do you? The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, a quick announcement to all my Teamster listeners. Quick reminder, it's time to vote for who's going to lead the International Union. How we're going to lead your union into the future as Jim Hoffa, the current president, retires. Ballots to vote in the Teamsters International Officers Election. Those were mailed out to every Teamster member across the country. That happened on October 4th. If you do not have a ballot, pick up the phone and call them 844-428-8683. Request your replacement ballot or contact your local and figure out how to get it. The time is very short to be able to do that. So make sure you get that done, because understand, you don't get to complain. Don't get to complain if you don't vote. Pretty much that simple. They've got to be in no later than November the 15th. They got to be in and signed, sealed, delivered, all of that. So make note of it. If you got any questions, comments, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So as you know, we've talked about this before. We've got friends in New York who have been on strike since April. And this is one of those things where you got a billionaire who owns this company, a certified billionaire, doesn't want for anything, saying, nope, sorry, you don't deserve a living wage. You don't deserve a pension. And some of the healthcare questions, I've got lots of them. But the workers at United Metro Energy Corporation in Brooklyn, New York, have been on strike since April, and here to share some thoughts on, how this happened, what's going on, and maybe what the next couple of months looks like. I've asked Demopoulos to come talk with us. He's the Secretary Treasurer of Teamsters Local 553 there in New York, and also Andre Solon. He is the Teamsters Local 553 member, also a terminal operator there at United Metro Energy. Guys, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate you having us.
So let me start with you, Demos, first. How did we get to this place? How is it that your members are now on the picket line? You got a guy who's a billionaire, could afford, this company's wildly profitable from what I see, could afford reasonable wages, just not happen. How did we get here?
He spent more on lawyers trying to fight this than it would have cost him to do a contract for 3 years for these guys. That's a sad part of it. Rick, these guys work hard, okay? Everybody that does the same job that they do in the industry that we represent, some of them make as much as 10, 15, and with benefits well over $30 an hour less these guys are getting. They need to get what's right. They have families to provide for, health benefits, retirement, and again, it would be very easy for him to take care of this. He could come out a hero on this thing, but he just refuses to.
So this is a power control thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's got an attorney that is not looking to bridge any gaps. We are negotiating, but it's not moving as rapidly as we'd like. And unfortunately, it's the guys on the line and their families that are suffering.
Now,
we just hit the 6-month milestone. Unemployment just ran out for them. Things are very, very tight as it is with the unemployment for these guys. We need to get this thing resolved.
Yeah. No, and this is a guy who, again, this is a very wealthy guy who could easily take care of this. But again, it's about power and control. And for me, it's about how broken our labor laws are in this country, because evidently he said that he's never retaliated against any employees, although I know a number of employees have been fired. He simply said that he just replaced them. So my question is what's the difference between firing somebody and just replacing them?
It's certainly no difference to the people out on the line, that's
No.
for sure. I mean, they don't have any security now. They have nothing unless we get a contract in there, and we negotiate them back into the workforce there, which we're determined to do.
Now, as I understand,
And
you guys.
one correction I have to make, Rick. You mentioned he's a billionaire. He's a billionaire more than 3 times over.
Wow. Now I understand you guys, first got the union in, voted for the union election in February of 19. Is this right?
Yes.
And this is one of those things. Had we had the Employee Free Choice Act that President Obama promised me that we were going to get it and something better, had we passed that back in 2009 or 10, you would have had a first contract already, wouldn't you?
We certainly would anticipate that happening.
This is a failure of our labor law, and the reason that we need massive, comprehensive labor law reform in this country. Let me turn to you, Andre, because you and your coworkers, you're the ones who are out there on the picket line. It's your families who are struggling and suffering in this moment, just so that you can have the respect of a living wage and reasonable benefits. What is it that made you make this step and go this direction?
Well, there are several factors. We needed to be respected in the workplace. We needed to have a living wage, and we needed a grievance process and proper medical so that we could take care of our families. That's all we're asking, to be able to take care of our families without having to jump through hoops and penny pinch and do the things that are not dignified as workers.
Right.
We should be able to take care of them as they deserve to be taken care of.
Yeah.
That's what pushed us to get to this point.
And I respect that, and it's something that has to be done. But what do you say to the person, Andre, who goes, well, if you didn't like it, you could have gone somewhere else? And you hear this kind of flip response quite often. But what do you say to that?
Well, it's not that simple to just get up and move around. You're in a job and you're invested in the job. You're there for some years. It's not just simply pulling up everything and moving on to somewhere else. It's just not that simple. Besides that, there is very similar situations all around, especially now,
Right.
where of course the COVID exposed this weakness in the system also, and that's why we're having all of these other strikes around the country. That kind of employee disrespect and so forth is throughout all of the industries, and we have to be able to make a stand against that,
Right.
as employees in general.
No, I'm right there with you. You know, the argument that I make in these positions, because I've had people throw that kind of a question out to me, and I'm going, well, what's wrong with standing and fighting and making something better? Especially when, as you've pointed out, you go across industries, you go, what has happened in this country is wages, hours, conditions have been diminished and destroyed, and we've seen these kind of billionaire-run companies squash people's organizing and squash their wages. And I give you credit for standing up in this moment and saying, you know, damn it, we're gonna fight back against this. Now, having been on strike myself, I understand that it's a massive sacrifice. So the question I have for you is, you know, how this is not just you; it's also your family and your coworkers and their families. How you guys holding up?
Well, it's tough. Each day is a fight, and this has been going on for 6 months and counting. So every day is a fight. You have to penny pinch. You have to budget every bit of your time, your money, and so forth. And that's not easy. And then when you have dependents, I have 3 daughters myself, and they look up to me for everything. So I have to be able to look into their eyes and say, okay, this would come to an end soon. But that's not an easy thing to keep promising without the financial backing and without an end in sight. 6 months is a long time. Other guys have families too with medical issues, and the medical plan that we had so far was really horrible. And it could be life and death decisions that spread over these months. And we have to deal with all of that. There's one of our coworkers, his son is diabetic. And soon as we walked out and they canceled the medical plan, he had to go and pay out of his pocket, which he could hardly afford, so that his son could survive. It is life and death. It's not just a passing thing here.
It is it's just disgraceful. And the fact that this is allowed to happen in this country is absolutely disgraceful. Let me go back to you, Demos, because, you know, I've heard that question a lot. Well, you know, you just take it. You take what you get, and that's how it is. I guess as somebody who's been in a union most of my life, I don't take that as a basic premise, but I'm curious your thoughts.
It's very upsetting, especially because it would be so easy for this guy. And like you, I've been on strike before. I've participated in strikes as a worker. I've led strikes as a union leader, and it's never an easy thing. And I have to admit to you, I feel their suffering. I feel their pain. Me and my whole team. I know me personally. I have sleepless nights every night. I wake up thinking about these guys, thinking about what's going to happen. We have negotiations tomorrow. We've been all evening long reading things and trying to figure out what avenue what are we going to say that's different tomorrow to try and push them over the edge. it's become almost like a psychological warfare as well, because the man has an ego. He is a philanthropist, but surprisingly, he's not showing much of that philanthropy towards these people. That's for sure.
And to highlight this point, as I was looking at some of the stories that I was doing research for this, the United Metro people, this company, the workers here, correct me if I'm wrong, some of them earn 50% less than what the industry standard wage for this kind of job is. This is supposed to be one of those moments, Demos, where unions pull people up, and this is what you're doing. You're pulling these folks up to just where the standard is. It's not like you're trying to set the world on fire. It's not like you're trying to make a killing. You just want your guys to make a living.
That's all. That's all. We're very proud of the pension that we have, and other benefits and medical, and we just want the same for these guys. Exactly the same thing that the other employers are paying their employees. And by the way, the other employers are doing very well. None of them are complaining. We get along with them great. When we negotiate a new contract every 3 years, there are no issues. Of course, there's great gaps in between when you first start to where you finish. But at the end of it, you meet in the middle. And as long as everybody's happy, it's a success. And that's what we want for these people.
Or the other side, if everybody walks away unhappy, it was a good agreement. But Andre, let me go back to you for a minute, because clearly 6 months is a long time. How long are we willing to stay out there?
Well, we're willing to stay as long as it takes to get something decent. We're not out here without some resolve. The guys are behind this 100%. Nobody went back in who came out with us initially, and we're determined to get what we deserve. We can't take care of our families properly with something that's close to minimum wage for a lot of us. We have to be able to get something better and something decent so that we could take care of them.
So let me ask you this: how can we help? What is it that we can do? What can our listeners do? What can folks do on social media to help? What do you think?
Well, many of the articles that are written out there on social media already, you can repost them. You could get in touch with the union website, and there are articles there also. And there are ways of donating to the strike so that we could be out there a little longer without a lot of the hardship that we're going through. And you can visit. We're there from 7 in the morning till 5 in the evening, 7 days a week on the strike line. And that's at 500 Kingsland Avenue in Brooklyn.
Demos, I'm sure there's got to be a website, a way for folks to donate to help. Because as anybody knows, if you've been on strike, every penny helps, every dollar helps, every donation helps.
Absolutely. I just want to mention we're being supported greatly by the International Union. The House administration is fully behind this. We have a whole team of people working from the International, from strategic campaigns and doing research and thinking of things that I never would have thought of that are really helping us along. But we would like to set up a fund, especially now that the unemployment has run out for these people. I had an executive board meeting on Monday, and we're going to be donating some money from the local to help hold these guys over. But if people would like to make a contribution, they can send it to Teamsters Local 553, 265 West 14th Street, room 305, New York, New York, 10011. And it's a Teamsters Local 553 for the striking United Metro Energy Workers. The acronym is UMEC.
Hopefully folks will do that. We'll try and get links out on social media on how to do that and help out, because every moment helps. And it's in these moments where, one day longer is not just a slogan. It's a resolved, you've been this far, you got to stick this fight out. So last question I've got for you. What are you hoping comes out of tomorrow's? Do you have hope that tomorrow ends this? Thoughts?
We always have hope. We always have hope. We're saying the right things. We just need them on the other side to cooperate.
Yeah, it's amazing times. But Demos, Andre, I appreciate your time. Keep up the fight. Best of luck, brothers. One day longer, and please keep me informed on what's going on.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you very much.
Good stuff, guys. And look, as I said, having myself been on strike, I know how difficult it is, especially on the family level. My heart goes out to these guys, but ultimately, you keep up the fight, you keep moving forward, and you ensure that, you're going to win a good contract. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
We are still on track for climate catastrophe.
Mind the gap. A new UN report finds massive emissions gap between where we are and where we need to be. Plastic could become a bigger polluter than coal by 2030. Plus,
it'll give a boost to consumer confidence and acceptance of EVs.
Rental car giant bets big on electric vehicles.
I like big bets, and I cannot lie. All of those big bets and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Bomb cyclone, yes. Bomb cyclones, because that's what weather is now. Just a combination of terrible things. So get ready for next week's forecast of murder typhoon, stabacanes, and the rest of the week is floods that try to explain Bitcoin to you.
Oh, no. Oh, that's the worst. This is your Green News Report.
I don't care what blockchain is. Stop trying to explain blockchain.
Okay, Desi Doyen, the oil industry is grilling the rest of the world. Seems only fair that their own CEOs would get a grilling in Congress.
Yes, it does. As we go to air, House Democrats are grilling executives from ExxonMobil, BP, Chevron, and Shell about investigations that exposed how the companies have known since at least the 1970s that their products could cause dangerous man-made climate change, and then spent millions to deny the science, mislead their shareholders and the public, and block legislation to address it.
Go get him, please.
Meanwhile, congressional Democrats are still hard at work trying to reach a budget deal that includes as much climate action as Coal State Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia will allow.
That's pretty much nothing.
Manchin's time-wasting maneuvers and demands to gut climate policies in the Build Back Better Act have seriously weakened President Biden's hand at the big UN climate conference in Glasgow, where the U.S. will be trying to convince other nations to cut their greenhouse gas emissions even faster.
I wish them luck.
And new polls show that 6 in 10 Americans of all political stripes believe that the pace of global warming is speeding up, and 55% want Congress to pass a bill to ensure that more of the nation's electricity comes from clean energy.
Yeah, well, if we did things because most Americans wanted them, we wouldn't be the United States of America.
In advance of the climate conference, Australia, a major coal exporter, announced a target of net zero emissions by 2050 with zero details on how it plans to get there.
Magic.
China, Saudi Arabia, and Russia also announced net zero targets for 2060. And it matters because the UN's new emissions gap report released this week finds that the world is dangerously off track between where nations are on emissions reductions and where we need to be.
We are really screwed.
In a press conference, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on all nations to strengthen their climate pledges.
We are on track for a catastrophic global temperature rise of around 2.7 degrees Celsius. Now, even if the announcements of the last few days will materialize, we would still be on track to clearly more than 2 degrees Celsius.
Totally fake accent.
Now, the report finds that current pledges would only reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 7% by 2030, but cuts of 30% by 2030 are the minimum necessary to avoid overshooting the Accord's 2-degree target. Scientists warn that more than 2 degrees Celsius of global heating would trigger profound global changes like deadly extreme heat waves, water shortages, global crop failures, and ecosystem collapse.
As opposed to what's going on right now.
In other news, a stark warning about plastic pollution. As the world moves away from fossil energy, the oil industry is trying to extend their profits by pushing to expand plastic manufacturing, which uses oil. A new report from nonprofit Beyond Plastics finds that if current trends hold, the plastic industry's greenhouse gas emissions are on track to outpace emissions from coal by 2030, effectively canceling out global efforts to slow climate change.
Have I mentioned within the last minute or so how screwed we are?
Finally, a bit of good news. Car rental giant Hertz announced this week that it will buy 100,000 electric vehicles from Tesla, accounting for more than 20% of Hertz global fleet, and that it will add thousands of EV charging stations to its rental locations. It's one of the largest purchases of battery-powered cars in history, and the latest sign of the car industry's shift to electric vehicles.
I like those signs. Very nice. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, good or bad, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Don't forget you can download our reports anytime via Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple, Google, or Amazon podcasts. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
The state of Texas, all of them, report to him whether they have one of these 850 books that he has identified as bad ones. These are the ones they evidently the topics run from racism to sexuality, and he says that they could make students feel discomfort, which is kind of weird. He says that the school districts are going to have to identify any other books, not just the 850 that he has picked out, but any other books that could cause students guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress because of their race or sex, or convey that to a student by virtue of their race or sex. This is somebody obsessed with race or sex and has bought fully into the craziness that we've seen on the right. It's only a matter of time, folks. Book burnings shall commence shortly. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, well, this kind of craziness and maybe some thoughts on the Build Back slightly better plan. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So, bringing back book burning, maybe. Excited?
Well, he's in a crowded primary race. I don't know if that was in the story, but he is, and he's one of several Republicans. He's challenging the Attorney General Paxton, who's seeking re-election next March's primary. So this is a primary tactic for him to, be able to say he's the watchdog for the, right of the right of the right of the right. Actually, I don't know that he actually has the authority to even ask this request. He chairs a committee, but I don't think that, lawmakers could ask schools to do things every day. I mean, the schools could drop everything they're doing, like teaching, and just, satisfy inquiries. I'm not even sure he has the ability to legally ask for this.
No, I don't think that's the point. I think the point is, he got the story he wanted. He got the headline. He got the attention. Hey, look at me. And everyone's looking at him going, either you're going to go like I am, going, wow, this is dangerous and you're crazy, or you're going to be on the other side going, yeah, you're our guy. We got to get those books and those books out of there because we don't want to give kids thoughts.
Oh, I think there's so much craziness around. I mean, I've seen things that I never thought I would see, or people saying, they don't want something in a school, and they'll do their best to make sure that it's not there, and that's okay in itself if people have an opinion. But if you're in a position of power and you do it, I mean, if my neighbor wants to say, you know, I don't like these books in the school, and then go to the school board and tell them, that's fine. But if one person wants to regulate, you know, all the books according to their opinion, then that's not fine.
Yeah. Or here's an idea: maybe know what your kids are reading. You know, maybe go to the library with them. Oh, I don't know. You know, maybe, you know, read books together with them so you both have an opportunity to understand what's going on. I don't know. Maybe some weird radical thought like that.
Right. Exactly.
Weird.
Right.
I just thought it was. I'm getting ready. You know, winter's coming. We might need the heat source because got all those books. Maybe that's what they're going to do the next time there's a freeze in Texas that they're not prepared for. Maybe the books will get burned first.
You never know.
Sad, scary stuff. So the Build Back Slightly Better plan. We're now down to 1.75 trillion. That's a drop from the 6 trillion down to 3.5 trillion. Now down to 1.75. What are the chances of this thing getting passed, you think?
I don't think the chances are good. We've went from the billionaire tax to no billionaire tax, from a no corporate tax to a corporate tax so far. Now, the problem is these are now all moving pieces because they've got to take the 1.7 trillion. I think there's a reason that the President of the United States makes that statement of what the figure is going to be, a reason, and it's because the President has probably felt that's what, you know, will happen. And then they've got to plug in, the committees, the structure, the progressives have to plug in what they think they can get. I mean, if we look at what is out of the bill, I think is a bigger deal than, honestly, what's in the bill for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, the big one for me, Bob, is how do you go, okay, Bernie Sanders is asking for hearing, vision, and dental to be extended to Medicare. How do you go, no, you'll only get hearing?
Right.
How do you do that?
Well, and then how do you take the family, the medical leave, and it went from X amount of weeks to 4 weeks to now nothing.
No weeks.
No weeks. Yeah, zero. So it's gone. And then if you look at, you know, the climate initiative of what it, you know, started out at and where it's at. Now, I think what has happened, Rick, honestly, is that this bill has now become whittled, you know, to the point where you're going to have a certain amount of people, and there's not a lot of room to go in the House on votes. This is now a House problem. You're going to have a certain amount of people. One of the congressmen from Wisconsin said, yeah, we're aboard to get the infrastructure 1.2 trillion, but a couple of other members said, no, we're not aboard. One of the congressmen wanted to, you know, have things in writing. Of course, you know, that's not a bad idea. But everybody's now taking a different position. Groups are. Different people within groups are. And so I don't see how this is going to survive at all. And, of course, the vote was pulled on the 1.2 trillion infrastructure was pulled. Congressman Hoyer, the number 2 Democrat in the country, says, you know, that he is disappointed, but he's asked maybe to do it by the new deadline, which is December the 3rd for transportation funding. That's all going to be, you know, argued. So the pulling of the bill, and this is what had to have happened in the private Democrat caucus tonight. Some will argue that it's giving Republicans control of the floor, not legally, not technically, but when the speaker says they're going to bring an initiative like the 1.2 trillion, then it's pulled, you're basically yielding to the Republicans having a success on it. I don't even look at that as much as where the Democratic Party wants to be. Forget the Republicans for a second. Where does the Democratic Party want to be on these two pieces of legislation? Because that's what it's boiled down to.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, clearly the moderates want just the hard infrastructure, and the progressives want the social infrastructure, and this is where the party doesn't seem to have the kind of control at the top that we were led to believe that they have. Because in days past, this would have just gone, yeah, we need both. Let's move forward.
Correct. Exactly.
I mean, you took it all the way down from 6 trillion. That was the original number. Most people forget that. We're now down to 1.75. You've neutered this down to being moderately possibly effective. It's going to help people. Yes, it's historic. It's a big number, but it's nowhere near where the need is. Especially when you're going, look, sorry, Granny, no goggles or dentures. But you can hear how bad we're stiffing you.
You know, originally I had said to you for a couple of months now, I've said to you that, you know, don't let the, perfection ruin the good, and get pieces of things. The progressives can get that in the $3.5 trillion original bill, but get pieces of things. And now it's getting to the point, though, that they really can't even do that. They're getting less than pieces of things, because every day there's a new, no, we're not going to have that in the bill. Now, it either comes from not just Manchin, there's Senator Sinema, too.
Yeah.
And also, now it's going to shift over to the House, because some of the progressives will say, it's whittled down so much, I'm not supporting it. And then some of the others will say, no, we have to get certain amounts while we can. But I think there were some clear winners. The dental in the eye, and the family leave, and tackle the pharmaceutical problem. I think those are clear winners that, if they remained, intact in the bill, would have went a long way.
Now, this shows me just how powerful lobbyists and special interests are, and not the will of the people. Because, look, I even know Trump supporters who are saying, yeah, Granny needs some new chompers, man. Yeah, we should be negotiating for drug prices. Yeah, we should have a lot of the stuff that got yanked out of this. The 2 years of community college. Everybody I talk to go, yeah, that should be. In fact, my idea of making it mandatory an additional 2 years of school, some people have gone, that's probably not a bad idea. Whether it's community college, whether it's vote tech, whether it's whatever, but giving those 2 additional years to get the skills that people are going to need for the new economy. Overwhelmingly, when I talk to people, yes, we need it desperately, and not get that.
Right, and the whole focus was on the argument of the dollars at first.
Right.
The entire summer. 3.5 trillion, how about 2.9, how about 1.9, the whole argument. Then once that sort of was getting worked out to a lower figure, all of a sudden the real meat of the matter surfaced. And that was what's in the bill and what they don't want in the bill. Meaning the centrists. Republicans, frankly, just because they have no agenda, but the Republicans sit back and they're just letting nature take its course. If Trump were around in some official capacity, he would be sticking his nose in this and probably helping the Democratic side in a sense by doing that. Republicans they're kind of quiet. They're just sitting.
Yeah, no,
letting the circular firing squad go in motion.
Yeah, let the Democrats be Democrats. Yeah.
So they need to really do something fast, because I used to say every week made a difference. Now every day is going to make a difference.
Yeah, because the longer this takes, the longer it takes to get into motion, the longer it takes for voters to realize that, hey, this is actually pretty good, the longer it stalls. And, if we don't get this done soon, maybe you don't get this stuff rolled out next year. Maybe it doesn't happen till the next year. And then, the election benefit, not there.
Right, and also the, again, the Republican side hasn't had an agenda, but the party in power in the White House is, it's the group that's going to get sniped at.
Yeah. So whose fault is this? Is this Biden's fault for lack of leadership? Is this Pelosi and Schumer, or is this just Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema?
I think that the two things.
Yes.
The major deal is that Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin don't want this. If they want it way pared down because of their positions in their states. The other thing, though, I think I don't understand, and I'll lay partial problems and guilt on Senator Schumer, because at some point in time, he's there with Manchin. They've had to have had private sit-downs. At some point in time, Schumer needed, I think, to go between Sanders, mainly because Sanders is a big deal on these issues, between Sanders, Manchin, and Pelosi over to the House, because the Speaker did have the votes for this. what's derailing it in the House is the actions in the Senate. So I've got to put the blame into the Senate because, again, the Speaker, is only having trouble in the House now due to the Senate. So I would like to have seen, if I were part of the system out there trying to get this bill, I would like to have seen some moves done earlier to lock a few things down and find out where they're at in the Senate side. Then they could go talk to the House.
Yeah. But it's all bad, and I'm looking at this and I'm going. The fact that you pulled out negotiating over prescription drugs is a huge fail. The fact that you didn't get all three on the hearing, the vision, and the dental on Medicaid, that's a huge fail. The fact that there's no paid family leave yet, people were talking 12 weeks, now it's none. That's a fail. The fact that we're not going to be taxing billionaires, and just this week you saw on Monday, Elon Musk in one day saw his wealth go up by $37 billion, and yet, maybe he'll pay taxes, maybe he won't.
Right. I think the billionaire tax issue is a very easy one. I really do. I think it's easy amongst Republicans too. I really do. I don't care if they're Trump supporters or not. I think that people in general will say, yeah, the billionaire should pay something. They pay something. So I think it's a win. The pharmaceutical price. I talked to, on purpose today, I called a couple of very conservative, Republicans I know down here in Ohio, and they love the idea of their prescriptions, being cheaper. And so I think that's the win in the Medicare components. I think community college too.
No, I think people understand that we need to have something done on the education front. Now, do you think this opens up if this gets done? Do you think there's a moment where Biden goes through executive order somehow wiping away student loan debt, just going, fine, if I couldn't get it through legislation, then I'm going to move forward doing something on the cost of college and all that after this? Do you see that as a possibility?
Yes, I think he could, because they have, and it's been narrow, but they have actually made some motions towards student loan debt already, certain categories of, forgiving of student loan debt. And I think he can do that. And I'm sure the White House will look at certain parts of this, if it doesn't make it, and see what within, reason within the law that he can do or not do. Executive orders have been done by how many of the last, presidents on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean,
when something can't pass in Congress, it happens. It happened with Trump, Obama, Bush, and Biden will be no different. Because I think Biden will, if this all fails, he will do something.
Yeah, something you got to do something, because you got to have something to run on next year. But also, it's about making people's lives better. And this stuff, as we've been talking about, overwhelmingly popular.
Yes, it is.
Which is why we're not going to get it. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, I look at someone like Manchin going, how is it from one of the poorest states in the country that you seem to be the senator of the 1% and being, against this billionaire tax? I shouldn't say that. He's all over the map on this, but ultimately, I believe he's going to come down against it.
Right.
It makes no sense.
He was for it one day. Yeah. He walked out Sunday for it, and then turned on it. And again, I think you're going to get some Republicans that would be hard pressed, to stand up publicly and say, "Oh no, let the billionaires keep their money." But he switched somehow between Sunday to yesterday.
I guess the check cleared.
Something.
That's all I can think of. Because the reality is, I think most people are waking up, which is why you're seeing a lot of this strike activity, a lot of people leaving jobs. We are really two different countries. You got a billionaire class, 745 of them, who saw their wealth grow by $2.1 trillion just during the pandemic. And yet we're heading into a period where potentially we're going to see a wave of people getting kicked out of their homes and out of their rentals because the eviction moratorium's gone. We're going to potentially see a bunch of chaos early next year.
You're right. And look, there was a time in America after the 80s when shows like Dynasty and Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, they were watched, and a lot of people in this country sat and thought, I can be like that. That can happen to me. There was a time, in the country when a lot of people did that. And as time went on, and the billionaires grew, and the wealth disparity grew, I think people became, disenchanted and woke up to reality. They're not going to be like Dynasty or the rich and famous. They're not going to be part of that. They're not even going to hardly be able to make it. And if you look at today, going to the grocery store, anybody's been in the grocery store in the last couple of days, and you look at, trying to make it, the prices, et cetera, people need some help.
Yeah.
They need some help. Yeah. So I don't think there's going to be a great throng of citizens in this country saying, leave those billionaires alone.
Now, what I find most interesting and most important, I think, for people to understand is, it's one thing for me to say what you just said. It's one thing for me as a working class liberal, a lifelong Democrat, to say that. But you at one point were on what I would argue on the cusp of the fringe of the Republican Party at one point. You were one of the young guns during the Gingrich era. So I don't see you as some crazy, wild-eyed, long-haired liberal.
Well, what we did, look, I was a fiscal hawk in this sense. Vote for these budgets one by one. Now, what did I support certain things in the budgets? Sure. I supported legal aid. I supported Head Start. I had a horrendous conversation with Andy Card over Head Start, where we both exchanged some words to each other that I'll leave off your radio show right now.
Yeah, we don't want the FCC throwing us away.
Yeah, we'll leave them off. That'll definitely put you out. And it was over Head Start. So, but I argued this. Do the budgets. When I say fiscal hawk, do the budgets, have your votes, take your best shot, and there were certain things I supported and certain things, I didn't on that side of it. On the other side of the ledger, myself and about 49 other Republicans, combined with Democrat friends, kept the Republican Party honest about labor a lot of times, about prevailing wage, about collective bargaining, etc. And, so I always did that. So I think it was just kind of natural, blend. But in my day, we didn't have the whole billionaire thing. I wish we would have. It had made it an easy vote to tax them, to be honest with you. It would have been easy. We didn't have even that many during those days.
Yeah. No, I mean, because all the, and this, I'm going to take a shot at you, but all of those bad ideas that came out during that era, the telecom bill of 96, the end of Gramm-Leach-Bliley, and the end of Glass-Steagall, and all of that stuff, I think exacerbated a situation that was moving us in this direction. And this is part of where we ended up because of it. All of the horrible free trade, which I know you were against, and good on you. Right. But a lot of those bad ideas that came out during the Clinton years and that Clinton-Gingrich relationship, I think got us to this place.
Well, I can't disagree with that, because Gramm-Leach-Bliley, which Leach was our chairman, and I can remember sitting in the conference room when they're like, well, President Clinton wants Glass-Steagall undone, and so does Gingrich, and so does this one and that one. And I thought, that we embarked on separate baskets of business and mixing insurance and banking and, on and on and on. And it did not come out well down the road. No question about that.
No, it's like a lot of quote-unquote reforms. They sound good on paper. Like every football play when I was coaching that ever was drawn up, it was always a touchdown. But when you put it onto the field, not so much.
Not so much.
Last question I got for you. I saw on Tuesday there was a vote by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, since you brought them up and saved me from being booted off the air. Looks like they're revoking the authorization for the China Telecoms USA subsidiary. What's this about?
Well, they did. They revoked it. There's the the telecom operations for China Telecom, and I knew pieces of what it was, but I went ahead and went through the wiki, etc. I mean, this thing is everywhere. China Telecom, and they have the subsidiary China Telecom Americas, and it's got cables running under the ocean. It controls, so much of the data, the telecom movement across the world. The multiple countries have, bought into it, and the United States government, through FCC is the appropriate vehicle to do this, have said that the Chinese government, is in this, behind it, and it's a national security risk, and that they're going to tell them you're basically out of business in the United States.
Yeah, within 60 days.
60 days.
They've been in business for 20 years here, and you go.
20 years.
Most people don't even know it, and this is one of the things that the Chinese have done. They've infiltrated, basically every aspect of American life without letting us know it.
Right. And what ended up happening is two administrations, the Trump administration, and this was through the Justice Department, and they took a look at a report very seriously and wondered, what should happen as a result of it. And then it went into the Biden administration, and the same thing through the Justice Department. And the United States agencies raised allegations that China simply wouldn't answer. They wouldn't answer it. And as a result of that, then where there's smoke, there's fire, and this thing burnt down. So it's just not going to be an operation. I think it's a good move.
So does this come up during the summit here? I mean, I can't imagine that having state-owned media being booted from the U.S. Is not going to be brought up at some point.
Well, I'm sure it is. President Biden has kept tariffs. President Biden has attempted in the beginning here to do carrot and stick, I think appropriately, with China. And I don't think that President Biden will back down off of it. China's definitely going to, be irritated beyond comprehension about this. But, hey, we have American ingenuity, American brain power. There has to be a way we can fill in the pieces for whatever China did. We can do it.
Absolutely. As always, Bob, I appreciate the time. Great stuff.
You too. Thanks.
Good stuff. Incredible insight. One of the reasons I love having Bob on. And that historical perspective as well. But this China thing, amazing to me. It will be interesting to see the fallout. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to call.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1861. That was the day that the Pony Express made its last run and passed into legend. The mail delivery service had lasted only a year and a half, until it folded under competition from the newly completed transcontinental telegraph. The idea for a faster Western mail delivery service came from the owners of the wagon freight company, Russell, Majors, and Waddell. At the time, the railroad terminated in St. Joseph, Missouri. The goal of the Pony Express route was to cover the 2,000-mile route from St. Joe to San Francisco in 10 days, or half the time of competitors. Riders would travel between one station and another on horseback, switching horses as they went. For this arduous job, the company targeted young men, sometimes in their teens. The goal was to hire small men to keep the weight low for the horses. The riders had to sign a pledge not to drink, gamble, fight, or swear. To back up the clean living, they were each issued a Bible. Riders were paid a minimum of $50 per month in addition to room and board. The riders faced many hazards from bad weather to thieves. They often traveled across lands in dispute between the U.S. government and Native Americans, adding to the potential danger. The fastest express delivery ever was Lincoln's inaugural address, which made it to California in under 8 days. Perhaps the most famous person who claimed to be a Pony Express rider was Buffalo Bill Cody, although it's unlikely he ever carried the mail. He incorporated the Pony Express into his Wild West show, turning the mail service into the stuff of legend. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Going to be paying attention to what happens over the next couple of days on the Build Back Better plan, because look, we desperately need the investment on both sides of the equation. We definitely need the hard infrastructure part of this, without question. absolutely, positively, without question, need the hard infrastructure stuff. Need the roads, need the bridges, need the transit, need all of that. But we also need the social part of this. And as I've been saying for a long time, most working people in this country are struggling. And, I think all of us can look back at a point where, things weren't as uncertain as they have been the last couple of years. Now, people say, "Well, no, things were." No, I think that you had an era in this country where work was stable, where if you actually went to work, you worked hard, you played by the rules, you had an opportunity to get ahead. And that's not as assured as it was. And I would argue it's policy. Policy has done this. And we used to invest in our country at a much higher rate. We always pushed to the edge of technology. The fact that we have a Chinese telecom company in this country, because evidently there's not a company in the U.S. that can do this, is insane to me. Now, understand, the Chinese company is heavily subsidized by the Chinese government, and the fact that we let them in the first place is, again, insane. But for me, this stuff comes back to policy. It comes back to, what is the right direction? In this Build Back Better plan, there could have been a lot of things. Could have been a lot of opportunities. Joe Manchin said he didn't want any of the handout programs. Didn't want people to be dependent. Didn't want the welfare state entitlement kind of stuff. And I'm not entirely unsympathetic with that kind of thinking. I've always been a supporter of the idea of making the government, our government, the employer of last resort. Having no handout programs. You got to do something. You want to eat, you got to work. And making sure that people have access to jobs. Whether, like I met a guy who lived in Germany. He said, look, if you're on the dole or you're getting this or that, they give you something to do. You go clean bus stops. So these 3 bus stops are your bus stops to clean. Now, whether that's true or not, this is what he was explaining to me. And they better get clean because somebody else's job was to make sure that you clean the bus stops. That seems sane and rational to me. But to say no, you'll get nothing, isn't sane or rational. The fact that you're going to go, yeah, Granny, we'll let you have hearing aids, but no dentures or glasses is nuts. And ask any senior. That's one of those challenges. And what do? Invariably, what do? They hold off on them. And you ask anybody who's ever had dental problems, the rest of their health goes right down with them. But we don't seem to really, I guess, care. The party of pro-life, the party of life. I don't see any of them jumping on board. Where we've put ourselves is really, really angering. Because this should be bipartisan. Because these are popular programs. Yet because someone is blowing the socialism whistle or blowing the handout whistle or the welfare whistle, you've got all of these politicians who have just lined up against it, especially on the right. And of course, the Manchin and the Sinema who have really, I fear, basically put the dagger in the heart of this. I go back to what I said months ago. I fear at the end of the road we get nothing, because the progressives aren't going to pass a hard infrastructure bill without the social safety spending money, without the human infrastructure part of it. They're not, and they shouldn't. They really should not. And you've got the other side going, well, we don't get our hard thing, you don't get your soft thing, and it's not how I think our system was supposed to work. But because of the special interests, the things that we, the people, want don't ever seem to get addressed. And this is why elections matter. This is why voter participation matters. This is why, getting to the polls and And voting matters. And I hope folks will show up to the next election and cast their ballot. Everybody, even if you're crazy. Just my thoughts. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, this is one of those really kind of frightening, scary stories coming out of Texas. A Republican state representative, a guy named Matt Krause from Fort Worth, evidently